clase y buenos dias. Today we are going to be talking about the subjuntivo, that is the subjunctive. So what I would like you guys right now is to get out a pen and paper, pencil paper, because I will want you guys to pause the video and write down some notes. And then you can continue and you can keep going. I think this is going to be a lot better than people missing the YouTube and having to watch the whole thing. So this is literally letting you get the core of the lesson. Okay, so we are going to be doing an intense application and study of subjunctive. First of all, what is the subjunctive? Subjunctive is an extra tense. So we've got present, imperfect, preterite, future, conditional, and now we're going to move into subjunctive. So subjunctive is highly used in Spanish, even though in English we tend not to use it that much and it doesn't get its own glorification. In the Spanish language, it is used all the time. And it is something that shows doubt, uncertainty, or recommendations. So you might want to pause the video right now. Doubt, uncertainty, recommendations, okay? Subjunctive is basically when you're wanting to say something that you're not for sure of, okay? So instead of I know, it would be things like I hope that, I think that, I wish that, I want that. So you might want to pause your video to write I hope that, I think that, I wish that, I want that, okay? Even I recommend that. We don't know the recommendation's gonna go through, okay? So subjunctive is showing that there is a highly possibility that things are not going to be 100% true, okay? There's doubt. Whenever I think of subjunctive, I always think of doubt, okay? Now, with the subjunctive, get ready to pause this after I say this. It is a two-part sentence. Please pause and write this down. Two-part sentence. What that means is the subjunctive very frequently stands alone. It normally has a clause. Write that down. A clause. So very rarely are you going to see the subjunctive verb just by itself standing there. You're actually going to see it in a sentence, and then you're also first going to have the clause. Write that down. Pause me and write that down. Okay, so what is the clause? The clause is actually going to be what is called the indicative. The indicative is everything that we've learned. Present, preterite, past tense, things that we know are for sure, that have for sure happened, that for sure will happen, and those verbs are going to come first. Let me give you an example. After I give you this example, I highly suggest you pause me and write this down. I want that he studies for the test. I want that he studies for the test, or I wish that he studies, or I hope that he studies. Any of those, okay? Pause me right now and write one of those down. So, you heard, I want that. Now, the that is going to signal everything before the that is your clause. I want that. That is your clause, okay? That is showing and hearing, and I'm speaking to the listener that this is my want, this is my wish, this is my concern, my hope. I want that he studies for the test. So, the I want that, we all know, is going to be totally, completely regular. Yo quiero que. Yo quiero que. Pause me and write that down. Now that is not subjunctive. Yo quiero que is totally present tense. I want that. That is your clause, okay? That is what's going to come before the subjunctive. Like I said, subjunctive very rarely stands on its own, okay? It normally has a clause that comes before it. Now, who can be the subject of the clause? Anybody. Maybe it's not just I hope that, but the teachers hope that. His mom hopes that. His best friend hopes that. Do you hope that? So it can be absolutely any subject in the clause. Pause me and write that down. All right, so I don't know why I'm pausing, because when you're pausing, I don't need to pause. But anyways, so when you write the clause, the word K, all right, that is going to be our little signal word. And that means the subjunctive is coming after that K. The subjunctive is coming after the K. When you look at a subjunctive sentence, you should be able to underline the clause, recognize it, know what it is, and then also circle the subjunctive. One, you're going to be able to tell what the subjunctive is by the way it's conjugated, okay? So, the yo quiero que in our sentence is totally normal. It's present tense. I hope that, I wish that, I want that, okay? That is not subjunctive. But we know after the K, that's going to be subjunctive. Now, in our sentence, it was he studies. He studies. So how is the subjunctive different? It does what I call the switcheroony. The switcheroony. Now, you guys are Spanish 4 and AP students. So you know that the verb, and I wish I was technical because I would put up the verb estudiar. Estudiar is an AR verb. And we know that when we conjugate AR verbs, it's estudio, estudias, estudia, estudiamos, estudion. We see A's, right? Because we know it's an AR verb. Here's subjunctive. We are not going to have this verb el estudia. And you're thinking, well, that's wrong. That's how you conjugate estudia. He studies. Right. But remember, we're going subjunctive. And we want the reader or the listener to hear that we have doubt. I want that he studies, but I highly doubt he's going to. We want them to hear that message, okay? So, what you're going to do is perform the switcheroony. So, you would write el estudia, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to look at that A, and you're going to erase it. And now what you're going to do is you are going to put an E. And you're like, well, you just misconjugated. That's an AR verb. You put an E. Exactly. With the clause, yo quiero que, and now the subjunctive, the switcheroony, you just formed a subjunctive sentence. And because you performed the switcheroony, you let the listener or the reader know that there is doubt in your sentence. This is why it's so important in Spanish 1 when we are learning how to conjugate, and I accidentally have kids put A's when it's an ER verb or E's when it's an or IR or ER. I tell them make sure that it's an AR verb. It's o, os, a, amos, on. If it's an ER verb, o, s, e, amos, en. And if it's an IR verb, o, s, e, amos, en. In Spanish 1, they have no clue what they're doing, but they're actually forming the subjunctive when they're accidentally putting an E for an AR verb or an A for an ER verb. Now, I would never go into the details and tell them what they're doing because that would be so over their head. But that's why I want them to make sure they're conjugating correctly. But you guys who are doing the subjunctive right now, understand you need your clause. The K signals the subjunctive coming after, and you will perform the switcheroony. Let's give you another example. I want that he eats his food. Yo quiero que. That's normal. That's not subjunctive. That's our clause. He eats. Normally that would be el come, ending in an E because it's comer. But we know we can't do that. Let's erase our E and put in an A. Now you're thinking, I just misconjugated. I messed up. It's an ER verb. I was supposed to put an E. Nope, it's subjunctive. So we're going to perform the switcheroony. Okay? Now, this is why it was so important that last week when we worked with those yo verbs, you will always, always, always use the verb of what it looks like in the yo form. Let me give you an example. Tener. Tango, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tienen. Let's say I hope or I want that the students have their paper. I want that. Yo quiero que. Not subjunctive, remember? Now that que signals subjunctive is coming after. Now, here's how we form the subjunctive. Remember how I told you you need to know your yo forms of the verbs? Because you will use them in subjunctive. Tener is an ER verb. So if I want to say I want that the students have, I am actually going to take tango, the yo verb. This is why it was so important, okay? So, yo quiero que los estudiantes, I hope that the students, los estudiantes, pause me and write that down. Yo quiero que los estudiantes, now here we go. Tangon, tangon. I know that's crazy. You're thinking tango. Well, yes, that's the yo form. Normally, tener ends in ER, so we would put E or ES or EN. But remember, we're going to perform the switcheroony. So, the subjunctive for tener is tanga, tangas, tanga, tangamos, tangan. All right? And you must always use that present tense yo conjugation, and that is going to give you that yo conjugation, how you are going to switch your verbs. That's why last week it was so important that I wanted you guys to know the yo form of all your verbs, okay? So there you go. Now that you know the clause,